So, all you people, whatever was awesome, you missed it. But welcome to the Njoystic show. Technically, our E3
this is
show.
brought to you by Cola brand Cola.
Yes, I love just how blunt it is. Like, I really, really do, because so many of these like generic brand colas try to be clever with their names. Cola, it's hard because you're like not mocking, but you're working off a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi, which are just whatever. I always like the knockoff Mountain Dews, where they're like Cliff. Or not Mountain Dews. Well, they do that. They've got
they're knockoff Mountain
Peaks,
Dews, basically.
Yeah, whatever. Or Dr. Pepper has a lot of good ones because they're just like.
Yeah, Walmart has like Mountain Breeze. I think like Safeway just put everything under like the Refresh label, and now it's just like Refresh Citrus Soda or some shit. And like that's a cop out. Like you got to come up with a mountain name.
I always like PhD soda or something for Dr. Pepper. Yeah. But that one's literally just like, fuck it, with the soda. Or cola. Cola.
Yeah, cola. Yeah.
Here, it's cola. And that's what it is. I mean, cola is a type of... So I hate the soda, cola, Coke, pop, the whole thing, because it's whatever term you use. But cola is a dark soda. And it's like, here we are. It's cola. You know what it is.
It's cola. Yep.
We don't need to be fucking clever.
Right.
This is generic.
It definitely ain't cola. And like it's like, well, is it good cola or bad cola? It's cola. It tastes like cola. They never said it was good cola or bad cola. It's the most. This is the most fucking basic soda I think I've ever drinking in my life.
Drinking. I like that too. Yes.
Yeah. I talk good. That's
we're artisans of words.
Good.
Yeah.
A good speech. But yeah, it's been E3 and it started on a weekend like fucking assholes. And I'm getting fucking Twitter notifications every like 2 seconds, and I have been for the last day.
Because that one tweet that I don't even know what you're talking about, but like
a guy I follow on Twitter got suspended. And he had a really funny Twitter account, but all I did was answer somebody's question, why did he get suspended? And I don't even have like the set answer to why he got his account suspended. I just, here's what I think happened.
Yeah, but it's just his fans are like citing it. Like, oh yeah,
I'm at like 70 likes on that fucking tweet. And because I'm so small scale on Twitter, I have notifications on, so my phone has just been buzzing like all fucking for the last 24 hours. And it's like, it's not a funny tweet. Like there's no joke or any, this is what actually happened. Like it is kind of funny, like the situation, but like it's not mine. It's not my situation.
It kind of opens your eyes to what, because I think a lot of times you get these people on Twitter that have a ton of followers, and sometimes there are even people that you can tweet it back and forth with before, but then you'll tweet something and it's like they don't acknowledge it and you feel all like, hey. But then you realize, like, I've had a tweet or two, like, not ever blow up. I think the most I've had was around what that is, 100, 150 maybe. And you realize, like, oh shit, when that happens, like, how does anybody follow anything in their Twitter? Now, I know you can, like, mute or ignore specific responses to specific tweets of yours now, which helps. So if you have something that's doing that, you can just be like, well, I'm turning that tweet off. But
you can? I need to find that.
I don't know how to get to it. I know it's there, but I think it's one of those features that you use TweetDeck, I think, like I do. And
I do on my computer, but the notifications keep happening on my phone.
Yeah.
And that's the one I'm really like.
I've had that turned off for years because I don't get, none of my tweets blow up. Like, oh, I think once, like I said, it happened. But I tweet so much that if you like the number of notifications, it's not uncommon for me to sit down and say like, oh, you have 80 notifications. It's like, yeah, but that's from like 300 things I've tweeted. That's not a very good ratio, but it's still enough to be. Yeah, there's no way I could have tweet notifications turned on my phone where it actually vibrates. Yeah, unless you wanted to have a good day at work, I guess. That could be fun.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, Twitter is something to, like, pass the time with for me, usually. And so, like, if I get a notification, it's usually somebody, like, it's you or Andrew or somebody, and, like, you know, that's an opportunity to fucking joke around or some shit. This is just, like, everybody being like, hey, we like this tweet because it's about that one guy who's popular. I was like,
That
all right,
I found that's the key to
that's
Twitter
weird.
though, is to not try to be creative or
Don't be
funny.
funny.
Just tweet at famous people, and eventually, like, it'll get
Yeah,
picked up.
that's the thing. I didn't even say it to a famous person. I said it to a famous person replying to a famous person, and it's so these people had to like dive into like 2 levels of like tweet threads to
That's
like
what.
find my reply. And it's like the most popular tweet I've ever put out, and it's which isn't much, but it's a lot for me, and it's fucking annoying because I have comedy gold.
I know. I wish I had the Twitter clout to like do that, to just sick my followers on like your random tweets, and I would always pick out the most like normal ones, like, oh, I gotta go let my dog out, and then I blow that one up, and you bet.
Find the one where I'm like, fuck, vet bills are so much.
Yeah,
And then it's like,
blow that one up, but
that
then you
type
have
of
like
shit.
insightful like criticism or something of a game you're playing, and be like, nope, crickets. But
right. Anyway,
this is
I'll-
technically our E3 show.
Yeah.
I hate to
Yeah,
brand it that way because it's E3 and everybody's doing E3. And
Well, here's the thing: is it's our E3 show, but I skipped like the first half of press conferences and I just sort of watched recaps.
yeah,
Because turns out you don't have to sit through that shit.
no,
All these websites will put up all the trailers you need to see pretty much immediately after.
I will say we started talking about it off air, and you wisely were like, "Well, let's wait till we're on air to talk about it." But when I first started doing these, and we started doing the podcast, I would really get into E3, and I still super look forward to it every year. And Gwen, to make
I
it clear,
don't.
you can tell from looking at our cams, we're not at E3. I don't mean like I look forward to going there, but
No, this is my bedroom. I brought it to E3.
E3, yeah.
and
They do the convention in your backyard. That's why it's such a clusterfuck this year with the public. But
yeah, there's no room.
but anyway, I used to get into it. Like, I'd literally make sure I had a spiral bound notebook and a pen handy. I'd like plan my day, even my work days around it, so I could watch the stuff live and take notes and talk about it. And then I realized part of it is that I'd have to go back and actually watch like E3 2011 to see. A lot of people were complaining this year because it's like all trailers and not any like developers talking about it, at least during the main like shows like Sony and Microsoft and stuff.
See, to me, I was like, thank God.
Yeah.
Like,
But at the same time, then it's like it finally clicked in my head, like, why the fuck am I like doing this when I could just wait and watch it nothing's going to change, and you're not getting any real information anyway. A really, really fun drinking game, if I was wanting to get myself plastered, would be to watch the Assassin's Creed Origins, both during like, I think it was Sony's or Microsoft's, and then of course during Ubisoft's press conference, and just take a drink every time they said exciting new features, but didn't fucking say anything about new features. Like I remember the one guy came up and he's like, oh, it's really interesting, since we're citing this one in ancient Egypt, we had to craft all new mechanics and revisit certain mechanics, and so there's a lot of new features. And it's like, okay, what are they? And it's like,
we'll talk about that shit. I think Assassin's Creed is one of the more interesting things, not for the game, but just how people have responded to that like trailer and that announcement, because so many people were saying like, wow, this looks really different, and I was like, it really fucking doesn't.
No, you can fly around with an eagle and use that to mark targets, which is cool, but if that's their like groundbreaking new mechanics, like,
but is that cool? I gotta be honest, I'm so tired of marking enemies, like, because it just feels like busy work now. And it doesn't feel like like it was kind of neat.
Wouldn't it be a cooler mechanic if you just hit a button and your bird went up and the enemies were all automatically marked? Like, why should I have to spend the time to glide over and like zoom my little viewer? But that's what I mean. Like, so many and I'm picking on them specifically because it was very noticeable to me. But all the trailers are like that. They're like, oh, here's this new game. It's got cool stuff coming maybe next year, and it's like, well, why do I need to watch that live? And I'm not saying, I know a lot of people have gone back and forth over the years, like, does E3 even have a purpose anymore? Sure it does. I think it's good for the industry to like have this one like grouped up these announcements. Consumers get excited for it, and that's great. And And I'm not saying like, oh, consumers are stupid and they're easy to. Press get excited. I get excited for announcements. I've just found that the percentage of announcements that I think are worthy of like watching a conference live has fallen low enough to like the two cool things from Sony's conference. I don't care if I'm not there for it while it's breaking news.
Well, I we took our notes and what we want to talk about. I actually broke it down by press conference, so we can kind of follow that as a guide of like what got announced and what I actually cared about, positive or negative. I all I did was write down game titles and like whether like if it interested me and like how in like a good or bad way.
Sure.
So the first show was EA's, which seemed like the most they had people just fucking talking.
That's EA's the show that I think I started watching after the fact and then just like it crapped out or something, or I had to go and EA show sucked. It was so fucking boring to me.
Well, I mean, the first, the only game I really saw on it that I was like everybody else was A Way Out by the Brothers developer. That seems like it could be really cool. I do find it weird that like those characters look weirder than the elf children from Brothers.
Yeah,
they look really odd.
And it's like they started going caricature with them, and then we're like, no, we're gonna go realistic, and ended in some really weird middle ground. But it's not bad, but it's something. It is odd. Like it there's something about it that you're like, huh? But like I couldn't the whole time I'm watching it. I'm strictly talking about the visual style, not gameplay, story, whatever. But the character design. The whole time I was watching, I literally couldn't decide. Like I was like going back and forth between I really like this to it's really weird. Like I never landed on I like it or hate it. It's just different. But
I mean, they're trying to pursue instead of like Brothers was this weird like co-op game that was like completely single player. Like it was co-op style mechanics, but you were in control of both characters.
Right.
But it was like kind of loose. And this seems like they're kind of like they're trying to pursue something in the old days of like split screen co-op, and I think that'll be really fucking weird.
But it could be really cool, and I like the setting and I like that idea. Yeah. Now, I think talking about tweets blowing up, one of my favorite tweets I've ever done was in regards to that, where I said like, I'm tired of these games requiring expensive peripherals, but I guess I'm going to have to go out and find a friend. Yeah. And of course, that one got like at a like, and it's like, come on.
That's going to be kind of a reoccurring theme I've noticed throughout all my lists is the get a buddy thing. Is like, even like the friends I have, like they just, if they do play video games, they don't play the ones I do, and they definitely don't do it at the same time as I do.
And it just doesn't work. And it's weird on something like that to where it's something that seems like it's going to be so story heavy. Like it would have to be a friend that you really connect with on like an entertainment level, which sounds weird, but like, or like I could see that being a perfect game to play with my wife if she liked video games, like something where you can kind of almost bond over. But I'm your typical. I mean,
I could probably get like my brother to play it with me if he wasn't moving, but.
Well, you can play it. It has online multi, except you only got the one system between you, I guess. But.
Yeah, I mean, he won't get a PS4 of his own until I fucking probably buy one for him, and I don't have money for a Switch yet, which is another reoccurring theme coming up. Yeah. So I really want a Switch now, but we'll get to Nintendo. But I thought A Way Out was probably the highlight of their show.
I was literally dozing off. Well, that's what it was. I think about it. It was during the day, so I was at work, and I was kind of playing it in the background and listening through an earbud. But I had tuned out because they literally, like, I had fucking joked about this, and they fucking opened with Madden. Like, I don't think that they should show EA Sports at E3 at all. And they're like, let's open. We're gonna lead with our
there's a Madden
yearly sports title, right? And in fairness, the Madden and NBA both look like they're doubling down on the like story mode RPG-ish. Like
which is the only reason I wrote Madden down,
right?
Because story modes in in sports games fucking suck.
But what I don't like about it is it takes away. We've talked about. I love the trend over the years of sports games almost being RPGs, where you create your own character, you have to like play good and play the game, like hope you get traded to the right teams and like work to get a better salary, all that stuff. And of course, the better you play, your stats go up. I love all that because it gives me something. But then to make a story mode, but write a specific character and like you're playing as this guy, it's like no, the whole fucking point is I want to play as me. Like
right, I don't want a narrative beyond the natural drama of like being in that profession, you know, to be a professional athlete in whatever league, you know, for whatever game you're playing. Like that's all I want. And like, you know, like NBA, I think the one I have is 2K15 or 16. Like
that's Spike Lee was in that one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like I like all that career mode shit except the fucking horrible story. Now that was just Spike Lee is just a terrible writer. But outside of that, like other games are doing it. MLB The Show has like more of a story now, and it's like I don't want that. I want to just be an athlete in those.
And I wouldn't even mind the story if it were somehow we're able to make it kind of an organic, like unique story. Like my story would be different from your story, and different events occur based on how you've played and stuff. But like.
I don't even want that though, really. Like, I don't want to know, like, oh, does your character have a girlfriend and is she a problem, or is it like, I don't want any of that shit. Yeah. Like, I just want I want the vacuum effect of just, you know, a career mode. Like, I want all that stuff. I want contract disputes. I want, you know, surprise trades. I want injuries. I want all that shit. I don't want, you know, manufactured Hollywood, you know, Friday Night Lights, stupid.
And that's
drama.
what's so funny about it is because they open with Madden, which that fucking blew my mind because, like I said, I had been saying that as jokes for years. Like, oh, they're going to open with EA Sports, and EA Sports is when I take my bathroom breaks.
They should have started with Skate 4. The fact, you know, people are pissed, and it's a big fucking meme right now. But there was never a better time to be working on a fucking skate game. Because people just want it right now. They totally do. And like the fact that they're not, or at least not to the point where they couldn't show anything at E3, it's like people have been telling you for 2 years to make Skate 4, and you haven't even started. You're fucking up huge.
Well, what I was going to get at, they open with Madden, and then it's like, here's the story mode. And then a little later, they're like, FIFA 18, here's the story mode. And it looks like literally the exact same fucking story. Like,
that's the thing, because
that's the only story that they know how to tell. Like, oh, here's this kid that comes up from a troubled, like he's pulling himself out of the gutter, basically becoming a sports star. But now all this stuff's by. It's like we get it. That is a common sports story, but
that's the problem though. It's too common. It's like any like RPG or out there. It's just another setting, like with the you're a chosen one story,
right?
And it's like I've done that a million times. The reason sports are interesting is because nobody's a chosen one. No matter how much talent you start with or whatever, like it's still a chaotic crapshoot of a bunch of factors coming together if like your team will ever win a championship or not.
Which is the phrase I love hearing as an Indians fan that lost the World Series in the most heartbreaking way last year, and everybody's like, "Oh, they'll be back strong." It's like, no. I understand sports.
There's no guarantee of anything. Like,
and they're barely 500 right now, which isn't bad, but it's like,
could be better.
Right. But anyway.
Considering the rest of the league, right?
Right.
But anyway, so I just wrote that down, but it applies to all their sports games. I just wrote Madden down, but I think this trend of story modes is like, I really want less of it, honestly. Need for Speed Payback looked like they were doubling down on like burnout things.
Right.
I still just kind of want a burnout game, but I guess that looked good. And then Anthem.
I don't know. That was the one where they like hijacked the semi truck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like they were just showing how the cars wreck, and it was like giving you like the slow-mo takedown thing.
Sure, but I couldn't tell. And again, I was only half watching it because I was at work and I was actually, working. But Was that dialogue like actual in-game like scripted dialogue, or were they just trying to be like, oh, these are some friends playing like co-op and they're talking? Because that dialogue was fucking atrocious.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. I didn't watch the entire thing they showed for it because it was a weird fucking like part of the conference where they would talk about it a little and then they would skip to something else and then bring back Need for Speed, but not like it wasn't the highlight of their event.
Yeah.
So it was just this weird like disconnect of like you just show what you need to show for the game. Like don't cut to one guy to talk about it, go to another thing entirely, and then go back to Need for Speed. It was weird. So yeah, I mean that stuff looked painful, but I mean, you know, I like Burnout and I miss Burnout, and that's pretty much all Need for Speed offers me is potentially something similar to Burnout, even though this isn't Criterion working on it. I don't even know if Criterion's still a thing or they disassembled them or not.
Yeah, I thought that they
because so many
shut
people
down.
went off and went different ways, and now this is like Ghost Games or some shit. But I mean, I thought for the most part what they showed looked like it could be fun. It wasn't the worst part of this presentation by any means. And the only other thing I wrote down for EA was Anthem, because that was kind of that was the first big showing of it, and then like they kind of showed Anthem throughout all the presentations pretty much. But it was EA's thing first, and honestly, a lot of people on Twitter seem to like be defining their interest in it based on, you know, how much they got out of Destiny. So if they, you know, if they're big Destiny fans, all of those people are looking forward to it. If you're someone more like me and you just sort of thought Destiny was okay, you sort of see this and you're like, well, that forced, you know, co-op dialogue is, you know, still really cringy for any sort of trailer or preview. But like, I mean, it looks like it could be cool. It also looks like it could go like every other sort of big multiplayer shooter now that like it's just sort of bland.
Yeah.
So I didn't really feel one way or another, but I mean, it looked good. It was interesting to see BioWare doing something that's not what we typically think of like a, you know, RPG or something, like to see them pretty much say, you know, like, yeah, we're going after kind of that Destiny sort of feel. That's interesting, at least. Jetpacking around looks like it could be fun. But
yeah, especially when you saw you could like jetpack under the ocean or water and be like, hey, now I'm a submarine man.
Yeah.
It's like, cool, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, that stuff looked neat, but you know, once again, that really, you know, that really comes down to like how like actually open is your world and how interesting is it to explore? Because, you know, we were promised that sort of shit with Destiny, where it was like, oh yeah, it's a huge world, and it turns out it's not that fucking big at all.
Yeah, there'll be these events where you'll come across your fire team, will come across multiple other fire teams, and you all band together. It's like that didn't really happen.
So that was EA for me. Was there anything else from EA that
I don't know? See, I broke mine down alphabetically because I literally Googled what games were shown at E3 2017 because I couldn't. There's so much shown that it's like as soon as I see one cool thing, I forget about the last one. So mine aren't broken down by show.
All right. Well, just if I miss anything as we go through it, just make a note and we'll come back to it. The reason I have it like this is because US Gamer had these handy trailer recaps where it's like, here's every single individual trailer for every thing they announced at their presentation. So I just went to those articles and wrote those games down if I thought they were cool, or I thought they were really, really uncool. So Xbox, their big thing was the Xbox One X, proving again that they are shit at naming.
So is Nintendo though. Like I don't know what the fuck happened. Yeah, it's like.
But I would take Switch over One X. And try if I was naming my console though. Mm-hmm. But I mean, so here's the thing. Like a lot of people, like I didn't get an Xbox One. And I have because primarily just because there was nothing I needed to play on one.
Right.
A lot they kind of and I got kind of lucky too, where like a lot of the games that they were planning to make exclusive, it got to the point where they were like, well, nobody's buying this fucking thing, so we got to kind of, make the most of Windows 10 and get some of these releases out on that too. So there was never any urge to buy that system. It sounds like they're really backing the One X, which is encouraging, but there's still just that thing for me where like there's just no interest. Like there's
and I'll say
there's
that
nothing that's pulling me to that machine. Like after Nintendo's E3 stuff, I'm like more determined than ever. Like I got to get a fucking Switch.
Right. Well, but the Xbox One X has all the teraflops and gigabits and DDRs, and I was fucking cracking up. They'd be like, "Oh, so many teraflops," and the crowd would be like, "Woo!" And it's like, "Shut the fuck up!" Like, hey,
no, we got Terra Gamma. It's
but
check what's under the hood. It's like, how often do you really pay attention to what's under the hood of your console?
I know there's people out there that care about that. I care that my games run. Like,
right.
If they were still making games on 360, I'd still play them. Like, it's nice getting all the new features, but I'm not sitting here like, this better be the best machine ever, made. But whatever. But I did want to point out too, something you already just mentioned is a problem for Xbox right now. But even the Xbox One X, most of the games that they showed for it, I think almost all of them are going to be playable on either Xbox One system. It's just they run better on the One X. And they were still...
I'd say it's a PS Pro thing.
Right. And most of the ones, if not all of them, still specifically said coming to Xbox One X and Windows 10. It's like, woo! If I really want to play that, I still can. That's awesome.
Right, and that's kind of where I was at, because, if I had to pick a best of from goddamn Xbox, it was just that Cuphead as a release date.
Right.
And that's going to be on PC, so I'm like, all right. Good.
And it worried me because that was one that they kept saying console exclusive. I'm like, I know what that means technically, but nobody anywhere was saying anything about Windows 10 or... That's why, because it's not one of those... Something like the Phantom Dust that just got released for free by them. And that's the Xbox One and Windows 10, but you can't get it through Steam. It's a Windows. Literally, you have to get it through the Windows 10 store. So Cuphead is still coming to PC, but it's coming to PC via Steam, not Windows 10 store. So that's why they just were like, we're going to pretend that doesn't exist, during their thing. But it is still coming.
It has a Steam listing? Because I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can put it on your wish list now, and I think that just popped up the same day that these conferences were going on. But
okay, that's good.
And I can't confirm. I think the release date's the same, but I don't know that for sure. But it is on Steam. There's a listing, and you can wish list it and all that. So I
hope so, because that's right around my birthday, and that would be a great gift to myself.
I recommend anybody listening to go, even Mikey or whoever that was. I think it was Pass Them Sticks. That Mike.
Yeah, it was Mikey.
Even him, fucker, go. You don't play PC games, go wishlist it anyway. Just show them you love them, even though you don't love that game at all for some reason.
Weirdo.
Yeah. But anyway.
But that's the thing. Like, the games that are really exclusive to Xbox One are things that, like, even if they get a good reception, it's just stuff I can't really care about. It's like, we got Gears of War. It's like, all right.
Well, that's Windows 10 now, too.
Yeah, that's Windows 2 now. But, I mean, it's like, that's what they were showing to, like, it was Gears of War, it was Forza. It's like, it's stuff that I know are like, those are quality games, but none of them are that, like, oh, I gotta play that. Like,
and before
and those games do exist. Like, I mean, Bloodborne was that type of game for me with the PS4. It's gonna sound weird, but that fucking Mario Rabbids game.
Oh, sure.
Is probably the most excited I've been. Like, even as cool as like Mario Odyssey looks, I'm like, that fucking Rabbids game looks so weird.
The dumb thing is we all question Nintendo so much on like everything that they do, but if you talk console exclusives that make me want to buy or own a console, Nintendo has them out. Now, you are immune to some of this because a lot of their really cool games on Switch right now are also on Wii U, which you have.
Which is the only reason why I wasn't like trying to get one at launch.
Right. Was
because like the big games, I knew I had a few months where it was like most of the games were ones I've already played before, but I still knew this is Nintendo's thing is like Nintendo, for all their struggles, does exclusives better than anyone.
Oh, sure.
And they do internal development better than anyone.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, if I go through and list ones that are literally platform exclusives, not like timed exclusives or DLC exclusives. Nintendo has the most that would. Any single one makes me want to buy the No, I don't have one yet because I don't have that kind of money, and I just don't.
Right.
I'm not that kind of consumer where I run out. I just got a PS4 like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So
like, to me, when I say I want to get a Switch as soon as possible, like when you're unemployed, that means hopefully in like a year I'll be able to afford one.
Right.
You know? But
between
but
like
there's
Breath
still
of the
that
Wild and there's a bunch that are already out, and then a bunch that they showed that we'll get to. Man, that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I honestly, spoiler, I thought Nintendo had the best showing. In terms of like just putting out, games that like I was either kind of interested in or games I actively just like, oh, I want to really play that. Everything else was more of a mixed bag. So, and that's kind of where the Xbox One X is with me, where it's like they don't have that must-have thing, and I think asking $500 for your console is really steep regardless. So they're not solving that problem that the one had, which like one didn't have like a power problem. It had a library support problem, and it was expensive.
That's the problem too. Is everybody says 500 is the death price for a console, and I think about I see the Xbox One X and see what it can do, and I think 500. And I think that's really not that bad. That's attainable. But then what you always forget, or what I always forget, is the console price is not the entry price. Because you always have to get like a game with it. Usually you want another controller or some other kind of peripheral.
It's an Xbox, so you probably have to get live.
I was going to say, at this point, I don't have a live subscription anymore. And in fairness, it was the same with PlayStation. I got the PS4 bundle on a sale for like $250, but I still spent probably $350-$400 by the time all was said and done. So when you say 500, that if it was just that price, I could have that and I have games to play right away. That's not that bad, but no. Like your actual entry point's probably closer to $650 at minimum.
And consoles are always an expensive business, but when you are knocking on that door of like 500, you really got to make sure you're stacking that machine to be something like, okay, well, like, because if I buy this, I'm not getting a Switch. It's for a long time, so I need this thing to deliver, and they haven't proven anything to me that they can, they can match that in terms of like content and stuff. This isn't me like, thinking like, oh, it's going to be the death of the Xbox brand. It's just, they've had the same job they've had to do really. And it's like, it's good to see that they're clearly more focused on this one. Well, it seemed like they spent so much time at the original Xbox One sort of backpedaling from their horrific pre-release stuff that it almost felt like that console was kind of dead as soon as they launched it. Right. Where it wasn't doing terribly, but it was just sort of like it was a very apologetic release of like, well, no, you can have used games now. We're sorry. We're sorry we brought all that up. And then it just seemed like everything was trying to play catch up from there. So now they can kind of go in a little more like that's the past now, and they can kind of focus on what this, updated version will do. But you still haven't shown me anything that made me say like, well, you got to get one.
Right. Like I said, before like the Xbox fans think that we're just anti-Xbox, I would have one if I had that kind of money where I could just go buy.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I own one of it, like every machine. That's just how I've always been. The Xbox One is the first time where I really don't see a point. Right. And it's like, I've owned a PSP. I've owned two.
But it's not that you hate Microsoft or anything, or think that it's just they failed to create a need for that console.
Yeah, that's my only thing. It's like the games I want to play that are on that system are also on PC now. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are like me, and they made that jump and got even just a decent gaming PC, then you don't really need that. You don't need their console yet. Yeah. It's not to say they won't get there, but they're not there.
It definitely wasn't a misstep because it was a backpedal to save developers from jumping ship and going over to Sony. But that it was kind of one of those shooting yourself in the foot to spare your handicap. Face, right? Like, so I don't know. But I thought the system itself is interesting, and it'll be.
Yeah.
If solid system, and if I had
It's
$500
also
to just throw
important
at
to know.
something, I would.
Yeah,
But
it's also important to know that like these machines, like the PS4 Pro and stuff, they're not really for like you or me because we don't have big 4K TVs and shit. So we're not technologically we're not who they're trying to sell those to yet. Because I'm so fucking behind the times. Like I just got a flat screen TV like a few years ago.
right.
So it's
Yeah, our HD TV is our first HD TV, and it's 2 years old now. So
right.
yeah,
No, I'm not.
and it's a bargain.
That's more
Like
my friends.
ours, like a $300 like knockoff brands. When at that, still, it's not like so. Yeah, we're neither of us are at the, and that again, a lot of that has to do with money. Even if I was rich, I don't know that I'd like run out and buy the best 4K TV I can find because it's just not my interest. But
so yeah, it's not an anti-Microsoft thing. I genuinely hope they, because like I said, as much as my wallet hates me, I want to own all this shit.
right.
It's just I need motivation.
The other thing that I would throw out though to people is a very good reminder that any of the, even we both own PlayStation 4s, and so I like Sony. When a new hardware thing comes out, a new console comes out, it's not always the greatest idea to buy it right away and have that very first first run console, because those tend to be the ones that are like, oh, this is great, I bought it right away, I got it before anybody, oh, it just caught fire.
Yeah, I waited about a year before I got a PS4. Yeah. I mean, I wanted one earlier than that, but it's still. I think I got one right around the right time where there was enough out to
even
play
look
for.
At the Switch. The launch shipment of the Switch had a lot of them were having problems where the Joy-Cons had a defect in them. It's like, it's not a horrible idea to give it a couple months to settle down.
Yeah, it's usually the best way to go about it, honestly.
Although on the other hand, some people do have to buy the initial shipment or else they won't fix it and send more. So I guess what I should say is, hey, all you people, go buy those first runs so that I can wait a couple months and get the second runs. But whatever.
Don't get the runs. That's always bad, especially when you're in a line for a pre-order.
Good way to lose weight. Well, not in line for a pre-order. Yeah, that's like that's literally like one of my biggest fears is being in public somewhere where you're stuck and
let me cut in front of you or I'll shit on the floor. It's like that's an interesting technique to be the first to get an Xbox One X. AC Origins showed up here. It was also at Ubisoft. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I like the ancient Egyptian setting.
Sure. They never fail to find, like when I say I don't like Assassin's Creed, and I don't, but it's more the formula and the gameplay. But every fucking time they come up with a new one, they pick a setting that I'm like, oh, like they almost get me back. Just they do very
by nature
very well
where
at that.
You're going,
right?
Yeah,
right. And then I'm like, wait, no, it's Assassin's Creed. Never mind. But
so the things that interested me about it is, they said that it controls differently. I've read some previews now that they talk about now the shoulder buttons are kind of your attack buttons, and it's not that kind of stiffer, Arkham gameplay where you're just kind of countering everything. Mm-hmm. So it looks like they changed that stuff up, and people were kind of mixed on it. I don't know if it's good or bad yet. It just seemed like people were having a hard time adjusting to.
Yeah, well, when you've had 13 prior installments that are one way.
Yeah. I think that's actually huge, because that's one thing I think needed to change is combat just isn't fun in regular Assassin's Creed games. So to change that is important. They talked about how there will be more sort of typical adventure game boss fights, which isn't the most Assassin's thing, but it might be the more interesting thing to play. But I saw, in some of those demos, it looked like I was seeing a lot of the same shit I didn't like, which is the eavesdropping, the marking, the hiding in bushes and stuff. And I don't like that stuff in Assassin's Creed because it just doesn't feel right. It's not a great stealth game.
Right.
So I don't know if they tweaked anything there, or it's that same thing where you're kind of sluggishly moving from bush to bush and naturally taking cover or something. So, I mean,
I'm hoping that it turns out that the pyramids are actually vehicles, and you have tailing missions in pyramids, like big fucking pyramids moving across the open desert. It's like, tail this pyramid, but don't be seen.
You're like a parking cone. um, yeah, I mean, if there was ever a series that needed to take the time off, it was that one. I just, I'm going to be skeptical until it comes out and I hear anything different, just because, so much of what they showed, it's like, that looks like an Assassin's Creed game again. And it's that thing of, like we talked about, it seems like a cool setting, but I also know how that doesn't carry an entire Assassin's Creed game. Eventually, mechanically, it just falls apart for me. So,
well, and the overarching story doesn't interest me like it does some people, and I'm glad it. I mean, there's obviously tons and tons of people that just are nuts for that, and that's great. I mean, I'll mock stuff, but it's always good when people get a game that they want. It's like, I might not want it, but not every game is for me, so that's cool.
So Dragon Ball Fighter Z was announced here. A lot of people were fucking, like, immediately. So I was surprised how many fucking people really wanted a good Dragon Ball fucking fighting game.
I couldn't be less interested in Dragon Ball Z or anything else. So I did not write that one down on my list. But again,
I wrote it down because apparently, like, people played it and they said it's really fucking good. Like, it's really, apparently they polished that shit up really well. And, like, I've seen, and it's weird to me you're not interested at all, because you were, like, obsessed with a fucking Naruto game for how long? Like, wasn't that?
Yeah, and then I got it, and I'm like, oh, why the fuck did I want this?
Yeah. So previous Dragon Ball fighting games were more along those lines, if I remember right. So the fact that they kind of went to a more polished, like, 2D fighter thing it's interesting to me. I'm not gonna claim to be the biggest Dragon Ball fan on the planet, but I was also a kid in the fucking 90s and early 2000s, so it was on, and I did watch it.
Most of my friends in high school were, like, huge into Dragon Ball. I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I had one friend that always described it. He's like, it's like soap operas, but for guys. And I'm like, that's not selling it on me.
Like, well, so is wrestling.
Well, right. And then they were into wrestling, too. And that was the same phrase for that. And it's not taking anything. I watched a little of it, and it's like, it just wasn't my thing. But I will say, out of all the different IPs out there that get fighting games, Dragon Ball Z is probably the most apt, because that's literally a fighting game show. Like, the shows are about people facing off in fights.
Wider range of larger-than-life, superpowered characters fighting each other. Why were they all kind of mediocre until now?
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. I'm not, like, as excited about it as other people, but I am glad that it seems like, they're taking a really serious approach to fighting games, because compared to the other fighting game on this list, that one looked really good. This one,
yeah, I didn't write that one down, but yeah,
we'll get to it.
It looks so bad.
Hopefully that works out. Code Vein, they showed another trailer.
That looked like Dark Souls, so I caught my not like Dark Souls, but it had a Dark Souls feel to it, so I caught my attention. Yeah. So that's on my list.
Yeah, like anime Dark Souls.
Right, which when you say that elicits two responses, like anime Dark Souls, that's going to be fucking awesome, or anime Dark Souls, that's going to suck. Like, I personally have both those opinions. So it could go really, really well or really, really bad, but it has my attention. I jotted it down. Yeah. Now, here's the thing that I didn't realize. I just interrupt real quick, but that trailer that they showed, and we were like, oh, wow, and it was just brief. I think it was part of, like, a montage. They just kind of were, like, flipping through games. It's like Code Vein, and it's like, that looks cool. That trailer came out 3 months ago. Just nobody, like, when you Google it, you can find all the coverage, like, oh, this was announced, and it literally was the exact same trailer. Like, it didn't show anything new. But most of us missed it. And now that's where you can say E3 has utility, because it's like they announced this game and we're all like, do what, huh? And then you see it in a showcase, you're like, oh, that looks pretty cool.
Well, I remember seeing a trailer a few months ago, but I didn't remember anything about it. I think we'd probably look a lot more ridiculous. Like, wow, that looks really great. If we're just freaking out about it. But, it kind of makes sense to just like, fuck it, throw that trailer up again and remind people this will be a thing.
Well, and it's a venue that it was going to catch more people's attention that don't necessarily follow
Yeah.
every little game. Now, I will say one thing that has me worried is it does have that very anime vibe, and it looks like there's like two main characters. It's like almost a buddy cop movie thing. And anime tends to do this, is very story and dialogue heavy, and like, oh, you know, whatever. And the appeal to Souls and Bloodborne to me has always been that they're not literally writing out everything that's happening. A lot of it's up to you to. So I mean, whatever.
But I mean, that's kind of what, you know, that's what I'm kind of open to. We talked about it a bit with Dark Souls ending and playing Neo and stuff. Like, if you're gonna see this as sort of a genre of like a subgenre of action games, then you have to be kind of open to seeing like what other people try to do.
Yeah, and it just has me worried. It's like, because I like the obtuse. I keep using that wrong. Whatever. I like the not clear, the vague stories. But it doesn't mean it can't work with a more like specific story. But so far, the ones that have tried that,
it's usually the weaker part of those games.
I can't even fucking remember what it's called right now. The Surge. I was playing. Yeah, it kind of stumbles on that. At least from what I play. I haven't played it anymore since I talked about it weeks ago. But
story and stuff is, you know, probably the weaker parts about it.
Right. But anyway,
I mean,
Code Vein looked cool. I got it on my list.
Yeah. The next one, it kind of pains me to say it because we've talked about it a lot on this show. We all know how you and me both feel about pirate-related things. Sea of Thieves looks fucking bad. Like, I really don't want to fucking play that game every time they show more of it. And part of it is it doesn't look like a game for me. It follows that trend of like, you have your buddies. Well, I don't have buddies, so what are you making anything for me here? And it's like,
and that's the kind of part of that problem there is it's like theoretically, no, we never do. Part of it's time zone, but if it was something that we were both really interested in, it'd be like, oh, we can co-op this. But it looks like you need buddies, plural.
Yeah, like you and me can't, regardless of those fucking Pirates movies, you and me can't hold a ship together. So, and it's just like, it seems like that's the type of game they're making. And it goes into that same thing I was kind of talking about with Anthem, where it's like, the more real people you add to your game, kind of the more restrictions you put on your world.
Well, and the other thing is the game becomes heavily dependent on the community. I know you've never really been big into MMOs, but I don't want to make it sound like, oh, I was a huge MMO like expert, but I played a lot of them back in like the World of Warcraft era. And there was a lot of them that were decent games. Age of Conan Online was not online. That's the new one. I don't know, maybe that was it. The Age of Conan, the original one. It was actually a pretty decent game. The community was toxic as fuck. The Warhammer Online was a really cool game. It was just as good, in my opinion. It had some better features than World of Warcraft, but the community wasn't a bad community like the Conan one, but it just couldn't build the community that it needed. It needed a WoW-sized community to run, and it just couldn't get traction. Yeah. So those were two games that I thought were good that failed because they're dependent on the community. That's the problem that you have when you're aiming for a massive open world or online game.
And with Sea of Thieves, I think the appeal of like, let's go to this MMO pirate game will be there for people, but it's like, once you're there, what are you doing? And nothing really they've shown seems that interesting. It's like, oh, you're being attacked by another ship. It's like, well, fuck, then we're screwed because we're all, you know, not communicating very well. And it doesn't look fun to me. It's not the pirate game I wanted.
But it's the pirate game you deserve.
God damn it! Stop with that. I'm so tired of that fucking.
Yeah.
God damn it! The Dark Knight was years ago. Let it go.
The funny part is, like we talked about, because I fucking quoted it last week. Is I attribute the quote improperly to Spider-Man, and it's a Dark Knight quote.
Yeah. So, Spider-Man is the hero we need, but Batman's the one we deserve.
But yeah, I mean, it could be okay, but it also had that, and I closed Steam before we started just to make sure that it doesn't interfere with our stream. But there is the game from what the fuck? I can't even think of the developer now. It's kind of a roguelike dungeon diving game, and it had like a real basic polygonal aesthetic, and it came out like last year. Shit, it's gonna drive me nuts. But it kind of came across as that to me, where it's like in theory the game looks kind of cool, then it comes out and you play it, and it's just so like they showed, oh, these skeletons are attacking, and they literally just like one clicked on them and they like blew them up with their musket. It's like, well, is there any meat to the gameplay though? Like,
yeah, like it all looks kind of like janky and sort of weak. And that's sort of my thing, is that like it doesn't look fun to me yet. I'm trying to keep an open mind about it, but the more they show of it, the more it's clear that like this isn't something for me. And like, even if I could kind of will myself to like, actually associate and socialize with people like a healthy human being, there's just not, they haven't shown enough to do to like really like capture that sense of adventure you want to go for in a pirate game. The other game, Super Lucky's Tale, looked like a Mario 3D Land kind of thing with a fox.
yeah, I didn't think it looked very good though.
It didn't look that good. But it looked like they were trying to spread out their kind of like, yeah, we have a kiddie platformer now too. And then there was Cuphead. Cuphead always looks great. Looks simple. For as much as we praised it, it has to be said, it does look like just kind of a arcadey shooter, but it's in a cool style, so yeah. I want to play it.
And it looks well designed arcade, because you can have arcadey shooters that are just like, oh, we're just going to throw a bunch of shit at you, and it looks mechanically sound. It's hard to say that from looks until you play it, but
it looks hard as fuck. Really, like I'm not looking forward to breaking two controllers playing that game, but damn it, I will to play that game. Crackdown 3, I feel like I'm the only person who thinks every Crackdown game just looks like shit.
Oh, no, I'm glad you said that, because everybody lost their minds over it, and I've never played the previous ones, but oh, no, I take that back.
I played one of the earlier ones at a friend's house once, and I was just like, it plays fine, but it's...
There was one that I think came out for Games with Gold a long time, on 360, and it was probably the original Crackdown, well, whatever one was on 360, and it was just like a worse version of Saints Row, except in like the future and you're a cyborg.
Yeah, and that's kind of the other thing I thought of with this one is like after, Saints Row kind of, took over the title of like king of like goofball sandbox games, does Crackdown 3 fit in that, where it's like, oh, you can hop on rooftops and throw a car? It's like, I've done way more than that, in the last 10 years. So I don't know. I like Terry Crews, though. I'm glad he got an ad spot for a video game. He always seems like a fun guy, so I'm glad he got paid.
And I'm sure, again, it's one of those where it's like, it doesn't appeal to me, but the fans have been wanting it forever, and they're getting it. So,
yeah. But to me, it's just I've never been into that series. I never thought it did anything so great to like warrant the hype. I was honestly surprised it got its first sequel, and then like I was surprised people wanted 3, but you're getting it, so there you go. Ashen, did you see this one?
Yes, a little bit, and it's one that I had forgotten about, and somebody tweeted about it. I haven't seen the new stuff from E3 this year, but somebody tweeted about it like, oh man, I got to see this, and you guys need to pay attention to it. And then they linked a video, and I watched it. I'm like, I think I've seen this before. And I looked, I'm like, oh yeah, back in 2015 when they announced it. Yeah. But anyway, I forgot that it looked cool then. So, did they show much new stuff? I think it's on the floor to play.
I mean, they showed a new trailer, I think. I thought it looked really cool. Having I didn't really see much intel this weekend. Kind of. I like the art style. Like it kind of meshes. Like it has its own look, but it also kind of has the sort of coloring of like an inside,
right,
or something that use of a lot of gray. So when there is sort of color, it pops out. And they do it kind of minimalistically. and trying to combine something like that sort of art style with Souls-like sort of combat. Like I thought it looked pretty cool, and it was kind of, I kind of wrote it down as sort of my favorite of like the Xbox showing, just because I wasn't expecting it, and it looked pretty neat. They showed stuff for Shadows of War, Middle Earth. It looked like more of it, kind of.
Yeah, I didn't even put that one on my list, but
I mean, it looked okay. It just, I
fell in
played that game already.
Category of games that I don't feel really need to be shown off at a convention, because it's like, yeah, this will be cool, and I'll probably want it when it comes out, but it's just really more of the same.
Yeah, but I mean, until it's released, you gotta have an appearance on
sure,
every show.
Sure.
And I mean, how many fucking things were already out that got like trailers at E3? Like I thought that was one of the more ridiculous things about the show. And the last thing I wrote down for Xbox was Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I know you were huge on the first Ori. Mm-hmm. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't like it locked you out of areas.
Yeah, it had your specific platformer pet peeves,
but it was a beautiful game. I loved the soundtrack, and it played really well. So them doing a sequel, I think, is just fine. And they fixed a lot of that stuff in the definitive edition update that I had a problem with. So they seem to know, like, yeah, people didn't really like that. They wanted to be able to do full completion on an exploration platformer. Yeah. Crazy, I know.
Which I think is why I like it. The devs are like me. They're like, oh, this shouldn't matter. Nobody should care. And then they're like, oh, people do. Well, we'll fix it, but I don't get you people.
Yeah. So I will totally play that sequel. Then we go to Bethesda. They spent the opening talking about a lot of VR shit, and
it looks really bad. I don't get there must be a reason to this, but why in all their VR games do you not have arms? They're like, oh, we'll model the hands, but they're just floating.
That's probably
hands.
Really hard to do, though.
But your forearm is just a stick. Like, forearm's one part of the human body that doesn't bend or flex or move. But
I mean, think about like the first person games you play and how little like hands have to move and rotate. For a VR game, like your arm has to, like, they have to account for everything the gun is doing rotationally, and then like you have to account for hands shit too. Like, that's probably a pain in the ass. But it's but your point stands. I mean, like, until they make those extra efforts, VR to me will always kind of look shaky and weird.
Well, because it's like, oh, look, you're a Skyrim is how I would word it. Like, you're in Skyrim and you're Dragonborn. I'm like, but my hands are fucking floating in front of me. Yeah. Like, that pulls me. I mean, anything you do for immersion, that's going to unimmerse me.
Like, I jumped into this press conference a little bit late. This was when I actually started watching the shows. And they were showing Fallout 4. And I know people like Fallout 4, but to me it was just like, oh, great, I can play this game I never want to play with hardware I will probably never own.
Right.
It's like, because VR is just not there yet.
Well, it's funny because I was just saying the exact opposite on Twitter, because right now GameStop has refurbished PlayStation VR headsets for like $199, which was tempting to me, except then I'm like, well, I don't have the camera either, so I'd need that. But yeah, it's... And when I say tempting, I don't mean like, oh, I'm probably going to buy one in the next month or two. But it's like almost like that, if it's something that's going to get me. But it's not for these Skyrim VR and Fallout VR. It's for the more...
Resident Evil is the only title where it's like, yeah, if I could play that, I'd like to play it in VR.
There's a lot of interesting indie, like... It's one of those, the way I worded it is... There's nothing in VR that makes me want to buy VR, but if I had a VR headset, I'd probably buy every single one of these little VR titles that comes out because I want to check it out. So
really, it's like, if you want that game that will like sell me on it, I want like VR strategy. Like, I want a VR XCOM or something. Like,
yeah, something where you're looking. I said that too. My single biggest, the thing I'd be excited for most with VR is that application in something like, I used a Total War Warhammer as my example, but something like that, a strategy game where you have that 3D like other world that you've created, but as you can look down almost like a god, like down upon your playing like chessboard,
and you're moving the pieces. Like, that's kind of the thing is like, so I feel like you hear all these developers like, oh, there's so many possibilities with VR. And it's like, well, then why are you all doing the same first person games? Like,
right, because they're the easiest to make. But that's what I mean. There's a lot of smaller games, and that's not just indie. It's a lot of small VR specific studios being backed by, Sony and Oculus and that kind of stuff. They're doing those things, but they're not the big AAA catch your attention titles.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, so like, I'm not saying VR is dead. I'm just saying it's still a long way off. So like, and it doesn't push me further to like, one thing is just like, one thing I wrote down is just Skyrim. Just stop with Skyrim. Like, I almost regret giving it Game of the Year because it's just fucking every show. It's like, hey, it's going to be on this thing now. It's like, stop. Yeah. Everyone's played it.
Yeah, give it a couple months and they're going to be like, have you ever wanted Skyrim on your toilet? You mean like Switch? I can play? No, on your toilets.
Yeah. Now you can play Skyrim on your smartwatch. It's done. We're done.
Well,
with
and the problem is Skyrim at the time was mind blowing. Like, I was all for Game of the Year. Now you go back, like, I just spent more time in the last couple months modding my Skyrim on PC than I have actually playing it, because you go to actually play it and it's not a very good game by today's standards. The quests are, it's like, oh, it's an open world, but the quests are all repetitive, right? And then the combat is like I really would kill for a Skyrim type game with some like fleshed out combat, but it's literally just like like,
there's a reason I played stealth that entire game. It's because it avoids a lot of fucking combat. And it wasn't because I was dying in combat. It's because it's just not fun.
No, because you literally don't have tactics. I play a sword and shield, and it's like stand there and put your shield up, and then swing your sword.
Yeah, heal, because you'll always have plenty of ways to heal. Yeah, I mean, and at that time it was fine. I was playing Morrowind yesterday, started up a new game, and it's like, that's how Elder Scrolls games are, is like, you have to mod the fuck out of Morrowind now to even get it to a point that's remotely playable by a modern standpoint. But, once you do, like, it's like, yeah, it's rough, but you remember why you liked it.
Right.
And I kind of have that same feeling with Skyrim, but I'm done with it. I don't need it out on fucking everything now. And like, there's going to be all these people who are like, oh, I can play Skyrim on the Switch. It's like, have you not played it yet? Like, it's the same world.
Right.
Like, you've done everything there is to do in it, but now that you can play it on a plane, it's new.
Well, like I said, that was one of those when they announced the Switch and they kind of teased Skyrim. I said, I could get the appeal of like sitting on my couch while my wife's watching TV and being able to sit there with her, but play it on the gamepad. But that would have still been way cooler 5 years ago. Right.
I'm done.
If you want to get me with that, give me Dark Souls on Switch, and then fuck yeah.
Yeah, and at a certain point, it's like, like they said something about like they announced, like, it's a weird thing to declare, but they were like, we're not working on the next Elder Scrolls, and to me, it's like, why not?
Well, right, yeah, that would be.
You keep advertising fucking Skyrim. I want to hear.
We've got plenty of money. We don't need any more. So we're not working on it.
And they're talking about it at least. But it's, it's still, I'm done with 5. It was 5 years ago.
Hopefully when they say they're not working on it, it means that they're talking about it. They're not like in production, but they're trying to find out ways to bring it to a modern. Because let's face it, if the next Elder Scrolls came out, but it was Skyrim, like in combat and in some of those other mechanics, we'd be like, wow, it's pretty, but.
Right. So the other thing they talked about was paid mods. Maybe you know more about this than me.
Sort of. Well, I don't know. I don't know how much you know about it.
Well, I tried to pay attention. Like, I remember when this was first a conversation, and like the community got divided. And it was like, well, no, mods should be a community thing, and it shouldn't be a business deal.
It's a complex issue, because we can say that. But these people people literally work more hours on mods than I do at my full-time job.
Some of these mods are really substantial. Like they add a lot to the game. It's not just like we added a crazy sword.
Yeah,
That's like
right. We took
know.
it into Photoshop and painted Homer Simpson's face on the character model. Like, okay. Now, but it depends on a lot of things. So if developers can choose to participate and make theirs a paid mod, that's great, because then you can still put out a free mod if you want. But I don't know if this program's going to allow that, because the other part of this,
well, they did say that it's it's going to be a case by case thing. So there will be free mods, but they will have content. They use the word content instead of mods to say like there will be user created content that will be charged for if they. That's the thing. I don't really know how it's supposed to all work.
Well,
and that's probably my biggest concern. It's not that people get paid for mods, because I do think some mods deserve it. It's just when I saw like the marketplace for it, and you keep in mind that first, no matter how substantial mods are, it's not a perfect science. So a lot of mods fuck with shit and deal with the game, and I don't know how comfortable people will be like paying $5 for content that's like ruining their game. So like, and just seeing that marketplace they were demoing, like it kind of skeeved me out, but I'm not against the idea and concept.
Sure. Well, and the third point of view here is, like we said, some of these modders it's a lot of work sometimes. Some of them aren't, some of them are. Regardless, I could spend 3 years working on a mod and in all my free time and put a third mortgage on my house to fund it. I'm still working off of somebody else's content. That's like me. It gets into like how much money are the mod makers going to get compared to how much are the game owner, the publisher's going to get. But the publishers do deserve a good chunk of that money because it's their property. I can't. Sure. To use the nerdiest possible fucking example, and I don't even like this series, but Harry Potter, the books, the way that they end, I don't know if you've ever read them. They end, Voldemort's dead, and Harry and whoever, Hermione or whatever, they're together in the train station, and I think it cut to like them, like their kids getting on the train to Hogwarts for the first time.
Let me out nerd you for a second. It was Ron's sister he ends up with.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. But Ron anyway, but it's them as kind of adults as their kids are like getting on the whatever, but it's kind of that very open, like to be continued type ending if she wanted to continue it. But does that mean that I should be able to go out and just write a three tack-on chapters for the end of that book and charge for them?
That's apparently what fucking happened. They wrote a play.
Well, but she did it, but I can't.
She didn't write it. She endorsed it. So this is actually a better argument towards. Well, this is your argument. Is they did write a play to follow it up. It was apparently shit, but J.K. Rowling endorsed it and got a cut of it.
Sure,
because it was her story.
But that's what I mean. Because then people are going to bitch. They're like, "Wait, publishers are getting paid, not the modders." And it's like, well. But it's their property, and the modders will get some. But how much? I don't know. It's a complex issue, but it's not. As a gamer, it's easy to see, and I was kind of joking about it. But like, oh, you want us to pay for these things that have been free? Well, the modders probably want us to pay for these things that they weren't legally. Because right now, they can't charge you money for them because that's illegal. So it's not a bad thing, but I don't know that it's.
It's just, I think it's going to be messy.
Probably.
That's the thing. Like, I think it's not. It'll be interesting to see if they can get it to a point where it's like a real, like, this is a market that the community approves of.
And I see publishers doing business this way too. They market it as a thing for the modders and for the fans, but it's the equivalent of, we've got some really, really shit. Like our city, all the commercial property in our city is owned by like one of three landlords. And when I say like one of three, I don't mean literally like a single person, but there's like a corporation and this and that. Right. But what that leads to is half of the commercial properties in our city are vacant because these greedy assholes want so much money for it. And there's one case, well, it's multiple cases, but where I'm getting at with this, there's one where there's a restaurant that had been in our city for like 20 years. And it was really successful, but in the last like 10 years, it started to get really successful. Like they they had changed some things and remodeled and made a name for themselves, and it was getting really popular. Well, all of a sudden the landlord came in and said, wait, now you're making a shitload of money. I want 60% of your profits. And
Right.
I'm glad they did this. The restaurant owner said, you know what? Fuck you. And they just closed like overnight, and they opened their restaurant in another city. And now the building sat vacant for like 3 years. But that's how business works. And I see the publishers doing the same thing. They're like, oh, we're going to give certain mods are going to be able to be paid. And then when something really popular comes out, like Counter-Strike, for instance, started as a mod, and Valve basically did this. They're going to swoop in and say, you can sell this mod, but you have to conform to this and this and this, and we get this cut of it. And
Well, I wonder, like, if that gets too greedy, if we're going to see kind of what we see with a lot of web content now, where it's like, look, I don't want to fucking give these people an unfair percentage of money for shit I worked on. So here it is to the public for free,
right?
And support me on Patreon or whatever the fuck. Because we might see more of that from people who are like dedicated, mod creators.
Sure. So it'll be interesting, but it wasn't like groundbreaking thing to me one way or the other.
So yeah, it really depends how they handle like that. What gets decided to be free content and what gets decided to be, stuff you charge for. Like I said, I'm not all doom and gloom about it, but what they showed just like it kind of skeeved me out a little bit. Kind of like when they first had a game with like microtransactions, like in the menus, it was just kind of like, ugh. Then they showed Dishonored, Death of the Outsider. I made a note of this just because the Dowd stuff in the first Dishonored I thought was some of the best DLC I've played in a game. So the idea of going back to that story is interesting to me.
My stream froze right at the beginning of that part, and then picked out. Is that a standalone? Like, is it considered a sequel, or is it kind of like a?
I think it's in the same vein as the Dowd DLC of like, here's what he's doing while the main game is going on or whatever.
But is it DLC or is it like, can I buy
just? It's standalone, from what I've heard.
I thought I had heard that it's going to be like a $30 standalone storyline or something. I don't think it's a full.
Yeah. So I'm interested in going back to that. Dishonored 2 wasn't as good as the first one for me, but I thought it was all right, and I like those characters more than like the Corvos and stuff of the original game. So it'll be on my radar. They showed The Evil Within 2 and the horrors of falling into pools of milk. I don't know what that trailer was.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, because when I was watching it the whole time, I was like, this has to be The Evil Within 2, because we knew that wasn't hey, we're making this. We knew they were making it, but it was really the first thing that they've shown us from it. But having not played the first one, but kind of watching you play it and watching other people play it, I'm like, it's like it's got that vibe, but it didn't seem to necessarily fit within the.
It seemed really, it seemed really different, like a real kind of, like, even though you're playing with the same characters and stuff, it seemed like kind of a departure from like what the first game was.
Right.
Which is probably a good idea, because the first game, like I've said a million times, it's very flawed. It's just kind of interesting. Like, there's enough that, like, I am actually kind of like, I'll probably play an Evil Within 2. And now that they've announced it, it's like, well, it still looks weird as shit. Hopefully it plays a little better, but I'll still probably grab it just to see, what they do with it. So, yeah, I mean, it was a weird trailer. They didn't show a lot of gameplay or anything in it, but then probably the highlight for Bethesda was Wolfenstein 2, which they ended on. That game looks, beyond anything for me, that game just looks really funny. So,
Did you play Wolfenstein: The New Order?
No, but I heard people liked it. I heard kind of you were more lukewarm on it. Than other people.
I mean, I didn't dislike it. I just wasn't. A lot of people are like, "Wow, this is amazing." And it's like, eh.
And that's like a lot of people saw, like, with the action in this trailer. They're like, "Oh, that game looks awesome." I was like, "It looks like you shoot things."
Yeah.
But really, it looks funny, and that's what's selling me. Like,
yeah, I'm sure it'll be good. Like, I'm not losing my shit over it because I didn't love Wolfenstein: The New Order, but and it's that. But that brings up a funny point, and I don't know. I don't mean this to necessarily be like this is damning evidence of it. But I had forgotten about Wolfenstein until they showed that trailer. Then I was like trying to remember. I'm like, I know I played it. I'm like, but I rented it from GameFly. I'm like, did I finish it? And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even remember how it ends. And somebody said Space Nazis. I'm like, oh, yeah, that rings a bell. And so I looked it up, and I'm like watching the ending on YouTube, and I'm like, I know I played this, but even at, like, I thought I'd be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. But like, I'm watching it, and I'm like, no, I'm 100% sure I beat this. I don't fucking remember this. Like,
Yeah,
and there's, like I said, I don't mean that as like damning, like, oh, look how terrible it is. Sometimes I mean it that way when I speak that way about games, but it's just a fun, stupid experience, kind of like Doom. I can't, off the top of my head, I can barely tell you how Doom ended, and that was my strong pick for favorite game last year. But that's not what it's not meant to like change your worldview or leave you with like some story that you're going to tell your grandchildren someday. Like, it's just a fun game. There's nothing wrong with that, but
yeah, you cut out a little bit.
I could tell because you froze for a second.
I'll assume you
just say yes, Steve. You're the smartest person I know.
I concur. About that game I never played, but I thought that looked like the best thing from Bethesda. Easily, the guy dropping acid in the middle of a fucking like stealth Nazi fight.
I forgot about that.
Pretty great.
And he acted like I've never done acid or drugs. Really, not even really.
He looked like a pro about
it. But it
like,
reminded me of all of my friends when we were drunk out of our minds. Like we have to be really quiet. And he's like talking to and you're in the middle of like slaughtering Nazis.
We have to be so fucking quiet.
Right. Yeah.
You're gonna get in a lot of trouble if they know you're here. Yeah, I mean, fuck it, dude. I'd probably be down to drop if I was in that fucking Nazi hellscape.
Mm-hmm. Especially what the Nazis do to people in that game, and in real life. But in the game, they managed to make it even worse.
So Ubisoft, they started with Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle.
What's that? I thought that. Yeah, you're right. I was thinking.
I mean, it started with Ubisoft, and then. And Nintendo showed more of it.
I would say that that's the highlight of the show. From what I want from E3 is to be completely caught off guard and left just smiling from ear to ear, and that's the game that did it.
Yeah, that's probably the game of the show for me, because I heard about that. We've been hearing about the Mario Rabbids crossover for a couple weeks now.
And
I had no idea.
I'll give a shout out to Laura K. Buzz is her name on Twitter, but she had broke that leak a long time ago and got a bunch of shit, and everybody's like, you're fucking dumb and blah blah blah. She gets it every time she breaks leaks, and then when it comes out and everybody's like, well, why did you break the leak? If you knew about it, you should have just. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, people she's
like break leaks. Yeah,
right. But anyway, but when you hear Mario Rabbids, I think some cutesy stupid platformer.
Yeah, I thought it was something like that, or like a party game or some shit. The fact that they're making a Mario Rabbids XCOM is just a fucking. That is such a weird idea, and
if you haven't seen it, we're not being like coy there. It's fucking Mario with Rabbids in the world, and it's XCOM.
Yeah, you put your Mario and Rabbids behind cover, you bounce them off your allies to get them better positions to flank and stuff, and you're shooting things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like honey guns and shit.
In fairness, the better comparison, I'll say better because I said it instead of everybody else saying XCOM. I get that. I thought it felt like a Final Fantasy Tactics type game because it's got the different.
It's not wrong, but it's.
But you can drop the Final Fantasy off of that and just it's a tactics game.
But like Final Fantasy Tactics specifically isn't about. It's about positioning. It's not really about like cover.
Okay, you could use stuff like Valkyrie Chronicles or anything. I mean, it's a turn-based tactical positioning.
Damn it, quit trying to be different. It's an XCOM. God. But yeah, that game looks really interesting. And that's the stuff I want. I want to be surprised when I pay attention to shit at E3. And that was the biggest surprise to me, I think.
Which is sad because I was waiting for that Sony press conference, the screen to go black and the big white bold letters from software. Although I spent months and months saying they won't show up, and they didn't. Because they basically said as much. But that's the surprise that would have like literally brought a tear to my eye. But...
I mean, it's not that surprising considering they just wrapped up
No,
Dark Souls
that's
3.
what I'm saying. The surprise would have been it showing up. It's not surprising
Yeah.
that they didn't. It was
Yeah,
disappointing
but it'll be a
still.
surprise no matter what,
It,
because
I,
we don't know what they're making.
right. But I liken it to every time the lottery gets high, my wife buys a ticket where I'm like, we'll never fucking win the lottery. And then you wake up in the morning and you don't win and you're disappointed. Like,
Yeah.
there's still that irrational part of you that I was disappointed that From didn't show up. But anyway, short of that, this was the surprise that I was like, well, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's a fucking great idea. Skull and Bones was the pirate game they did a survey on, like, would you just play a ship game? And it's like, and everybody was like, yeah. And it took them this long to finally show something. It looked all right. Like it looked
At
like
first split second, I was interested in it for just a second, and then here's what hit me. It's like the pirate battles were okay. I liked just more being a pirate, but I don't think that the ship fighting mechanics in Assassin's Creed were that great. They weren't terrible. That they're just not that engaging. But then I realized this is a multiplayer only Ubisoft title, like The Division or like For Honor.
Well, they're trying to. Because somebody asked them about that, like, will there be single player? And they were like, oh, we're kind of merging the two, and it's like, all right, so it's multiplayer,
right?
Pretty much.
That's what they said about The Division. I mean, technically, when I say multiplayer only, Division has a single player storyline, but
yeah, and and it bummed me out because it does, like, it looks like they got a lot of that stuff, polished up. But it's like, I want a pirate adventure.
Right, that's the problem, is merge that with Sea of Thieves. Like, take I can play this by myself, and it has these cool graphics, but then I can dive for treasure and go hunt treasure on deserted islands. Like, I want both of those things. Like,
the reason Black Flag was good was because there was just enough, like, meat to the mechanics of Assassin's Creed that, like, you could go on that adventure. Mm-hmm. The only problem with it was that it was an Assassin's Creed game, but like I wanted to see, like, okay, get off your ship and go explore this island and stuff, like, because if I'm just on a ship shooting other ships, that's not doing
it's Mario Kart on the high seas, Mario Kart Battle on the high seas.
Yeah, that's just a different type of shooter at the end of the day,
right?
So, it looked interesting, but it didn't get me excited.
Well,
and
I will add, in fairness, they did keep the boarding mechanic, too, where you can swing across and sword fight the other. But I don't know how much of that is manual and how much of that...
what they showed of that is like, oh, now you can board. And once you board, it cut to, like, you won.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you just, like, the ship? Because that's not what I want. I want to play a character who has a ship.
Right.
I don't want to play the ship.
So that's what I mean. I went somewhere. There are two different spectrums of pirate games. I went in the middle of Sea of Thieves and Skull and Bones.
Yeah. There's got to be somebody out there who will make that fucking game. Am I gonna have to do it? Am I gonna have to learn to fucking actually make games?
We can screw this. We can start game dev instead. I know it's just enough Unity, but massively multiplayer, or even any multiplayer, is way outside of my skill level. But anyway,
that's good because I don't have friends, as we covered. So we can be keeping single player games alive.
Do you like same couch co-op minus the co-op?
Right. Do you have one partner you can trust? Yourself. They showed Far Cry 5.
My stream died before that, so I missed the very end of the Ubisoft stuff.
Looked like more Far Cry. They're kind of being goofy about it, which is weird because it's, I guess, being written by the guy who wrote BioShock Infinite, so I thought they were going to, like, double down on, story and stuff.
There'll be just a lot of over-the-top political statements, and that's fine, I guess.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean...
Socio-political statements, I should say, but
from a gameplay standpoint, it doesn't look like it's changing that much. Yeah. So it's like,
I'll probably play it though, because I've not played Far Cry, and there's been enough of them that I'm like, like Far Cry Primal. It's like, that's interesting. 3 and 4 both were like, 3
was really good. It shit the bed narratively, but it was.
Here's why I haven't played them is because it's like, I'm not like dying to play them, and then 3 is one of those that's old enough now that it'll go on sale, and I'm like, sweet, and they're like, instead of $60, it's $54, and I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah. I've had 4 on my shelf forever. I just haven't gotten to it. But that was mostly what Ubisoft did. They showed more Assassin's Creed and stuff. You still with me?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
you're cutting out on my end still a little bit, so I have to check to be sure.
we're getting there. We're just about halfway through my list. We're gonna hit a whole bunch of them at once, though. But
yeah, I'm gonna try to knock out some of the Sony shit out pretty quick because I don't have a lot of thoughts. Sony pre-show, real quick. They showed off the Crash. They showed off the Crash trilogy. We already, it's almost out. I don't know why they even wasted spots. Knack 2, I just wrote "fuck off."
That's the subtitle anyway.
Yeah, that's fuck you. Just fuck you. Like, really? And then they showed a Matterfall, which they didn't show a lot of, but it looked like it could be kind of cool. And then they showed probably the highlight of anything Sony showed me was Hot Shots Golf becoming everybody's fish and golf fun time happy hour.
Yeah, I thought you were joking about that, but
no, it's everybody's golf. That's the Japanese name for Hot Shots Golf, and they're just bringing it over here. They even said in the video that if you have a Hot Shots Golf tattoo, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to change it to an everybody's golf tattoo. And that made me wonder what poor soul got a Hot Shots Golf.
Hey, it's a good series. I like Hot Shots Golf. It's
I
solid.
do too, but I would not fucking put it on my body.
No.
Become one with it. But this looked good. I mean, I haven't played one in a while, so I'm kind of like, yeah, kind of arcadey, cartoon golf game. Sounds like it could be kind of fun. Because sometimes I don't really want a sim. I just want something I can kind of throw on. And
most of the time, the arcadey golf ends up being more fun to play than the sim golf anyway.
Yeah,
like if I'm going to sim golf, I'll just grab my clubs and go to the golf course. But
right. So I thought that actually looked pretty good. I thought the fact that you can actually fish in it is very weird. I don't know how long they've been doing that, but they're doing it. They showed.
I'm a sucker for stupid fishing mini games too, so sign me up.
And they closed the pre-show out with Gran Turismo, which is just the most, like, they always have the most pretentious fucking video things for a goddamn racer. It's like it's these really, like, yeah, we pixelated every part of a tail light, and it's like, great, like, is it fun? Yeah. And that's how I always feel. I know Gran Turismo is huge for especially in like Europe and Japan. They love it. But to me, it's just, I've never gotten into them, and then they always look good, but it's just not my type of racer usually. But I'm keeping an open mind. So Gran Turismo Sport was the last on the pre-show, and then Sony started proper with Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Looked like kind of, another Uncharted game, which is totally fine. I liked Chloe in Uncharted 2. I thought she was a good character, so the idea of her getting her own game is all right with me. They showed Horizon DLC, which...
That's where I came into the stream, right at the end of that.
Yeah, and I, having just played Horizon and really enjoyed it, I don't need more Horizon content right now, so I'm not...
But I wasn't like disappointed that they're creating it, though.
No, not at all. It's just I'm not... It's kind of like Neo, where when they're like, hey, the first DLC's coming out, I was like, I don't need any more things.
I mean, to put this in perspective, Witcher 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. I haven't touched any of the DLC. Because, like, you finish it and you moved on. I'm not in a Witcher 3 spot right now. Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not saying they shouldn't have come out with it, and I hear it's really good. In fact, I hear some of the best parts of the...
I heard it's better than the main game.
Yeah.
They showed Days Gone. It's interesting to me, like, a lot of people who I would suspect would be way into it are just not feeling anything for Days Gone.
Weird to me. I don't know if it's changed directions or what, but when they first showed it, it looked like Dead Rising almost to me, like that. And
in
then
terms
everything,
of like the numbers.
Yeah, and then just a situation like, oh, it's zany, you're just blowing the shit out of a ton of zombies, and then everything else that they've shown looks like The Last of Us. And it's
They're
like,
trying to go for that a little bit, and it's
yeah, I don't
mean,
know what this game is. Like, I just can't get a beat on it. But either way, I'm
the
not a zombie
one
person, so
the one thing that appealed to me about it was the idea of like you being in the kind of this woodsy apocalypse scenario, just driving a motorcycle around.
yeah, you're
Like that looked pretty fun. That looked like the most fun part of the trailer.
but just
Everything else
make it
looked
Daryl
like,
from The Walking Dead. Except you hate Walking Dead, but
sure, but I like Daryl.
yeah, everybody. He's got a fucking crossbow and a motorcycle.
Everybody likes Daryl.
Right.
It's just the show's not about Daryl, and that's the problem. But if it was just like kind of that shit, that like I'd be way into it. It just sort of got into shit like the rest of the demo got into stuff. It's like I've done all that before. I've thrown rocks at bushes to send people to go after bushes and stuff, and it's like it seems to be falling back on those sort of zombie tropes that I'm exhausted by. It doesn't look like a bad zombie game by any means, but it doesn't look like it does anything that really stands out. It seems like they got their foot in the like halfway in the water for like, we're kind of doing Last of Us and we're kind of doing an open world game. And it's like, well, we'll see if you can do one or either. Like it's still too early to say really with that game, but I was kind of surprised because most people, it seems like it would just be like critic bait to like, oh man, this is a gritty zombie apocalypse story, and everybody fucking loves those. They showed Monster Hunter World, which has divided a nation.
I'm all in because I like Monster Hunter anyway. But
I haven't played Monster Hunter. That one looked really cool.
Yeah.
That was probably my favorite thing they showed for Sony. But Monster Hunter fans are pissed.
And again, it cheated because, well, not really cheated, but again, I'm an idiot, and even though I knew every bone in my body knew that From wasn't going to be there, when they first showed like that guy walking through the cave with that, like, it was a very Dark Souls looking sword on his back, I was thinking, oh my god, could this be From? And then it wasn't, and I'm like, and then they're like, oh, it's Monster Hunter. It's like, oh, fuck yeah. I'll take that.
Sure, I thought it looked really cool. I've heard a lot of great things about Monster Hunter.
It's got its,
I've also
like,
heard a lot of like
weird Japanese
busy
hang-ups. Yeah. But I mean, you were kind of making your way through Persona, and same type of thing where it's like they do a lot of very Japanese culture game culture, I should say, things where it's like not necessarily meshed with Western.
Right.
But that's why people are getting mad, is because this one looks like they want to kind of merge it more towards the center of those two worlds. And then so diehard Monster Hunter fans are like, hey, and it's like, I think it could be good. It's usually good if you can get your franchise that you love so much more appeal, because that will keep games coming. Otherwise, they'll quit making the games altogether. Now, I think Monster Hunter makes enough money in Japan that wasn't going to happen, but they could quit bringing them over here. I mean, they basically have. I think we get like a third of all Monster Hunter stuff over here, it seems. But and we get it when it's like Yakuza. When a Monster Hunter comes out here, we're like, sweet, a new Monster Hunter game. Japan's like, yeah, and it was new 5 years ago.
Yeah, we're getting fucking Monster Hunter 12 over here.
Right. So anyway, I
throw that out as a joke. They may very well have like 20 Monster Hunters that I don't know about. But I thought it looked good. As somebody who has no experience with the series, I thought it looked pretty cool and looked interesting. Definitely seemed like they were taking advantage of the hardware, and it looked like it popped out a lot more than kind of past games. So it looked cool. Shadow of the Colossus remake. Now, I know you were talking to somebody else about, like, you didn't play.
I played the first one on PlayStation 2, the original. I mean, it's old enough on PlayStation 2. I always have to think for a second if it was PlayStation 1. But PlayStation 2, and I played up to like that flying one.
There's two flying ones.
That's the first
there's one
I think.
Above the water, and then there's one in the
water's
desert.
the one. Yeah. So I think that's the. I mean, it's been. When I say I played it, this is when the game came out, like back then. And it was one of those where I never finished it, mostly because I didn't play a lot of video games back then. We had just bought a house and all sorts of things. I wasn't focused on video games, so I just kind of quit playing it. So when the HD remake came out for PlayStation 3, I was like, yeah, that's something that I could see myself playing. I just never played my PlayStation 3 much. So then when they announced this, I'm like, sweet. It looks like a proper remake, not just like we updated textures and added polygons. Like,
see, I'm kind of like it does look good. The problem I'm having is how just like they remade a reboot. Like like Jeff
Sure.
Gerstmann had a great rant about like about the Resident Evil shit where they kept remaking that game and re-releasing it. It was like
Skyrim, like we just talked about at the
yeah. You remade your remake. How long does this go on?
Kingdom Hearts. I mean, it's getting to be a very obnoxious trend. But
and to me, this is the most obnoxious because there is already like the original Shadow updated for HD on the PS3 looks really good. It doesn't look as good as this, obviously, because they're completely overhauling this shit. But if you had just made your stupid fucking console backwards compatible, we wouldn't like.
But the hopeful part is that this is a true remake where they kind of update some of the controls and mechanics too, and it sounds like they're going to, for better or worse, we don't know yet. But yeah, no, I get exactly where you're coming from. For somebody that's played the original, and I think you played through it a couple times, and then if you played the HD remake, I could see not being excited about this at all, because it's like, this isn't, why would I want to buy it again?
It's like, I don't want to buy it again. You know,
so I totally get that, but as someone like myself that never really got a proper chance to play it, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and I thought you people like you were like the unicorn. Like I didn't think you were, real. But hey,
yeah.
to each
a lot
their
of people
own.
think that, but
that wasn't like I wasn't like hating